The grief support group leader had suggested hobbies, therapy, maybe volunteering. But Marcus Ashford never imagined he would find himself standing outside a small, independent bookstore on a Tuesday evening, staring at a handwritten sign that read, "Book Club tonight, 7 p.m., all welcome." He was 52 years old, had built a commercial real estate empire worth over $300 million, and had spent the last 2 years rattling around in a home that felt too big, too quiet, too empty without Sarah. His late wife had loved books the way some people loved breathing. Their house still held her collections, her annotations in margins, her bookmarks tucked into pages she had never finished. Marcus had avoided them all, unable to face the physical evidence of interrupted dreams. But this morning, his daughter Emma had called from Seattle, her voice tinged with worry that she tried to hide. "Dad, you need to do something. Anything. Mom would not want you living like this." She was right, of course. Sarah would have kicked his ass for wallowing. So here he stood, a man who had not read a book for pleasure in over a decade, about to walk into a room full of strangers to discuss literature he probably would not understand. The bookstore was called Chapter and Verse, wedged between a coffee shop and a vintage clothing boutique in the artistic district downtown. Marcus pushed open the door, and a bell chimed softly. The smell hit him first, that particular combination of paper, ink, coffee, and old wood that seemed unique to independent bookstores. Shelves towered toward exposed brick walls, and warm Edison bulbs cast everything in golden light. "You here for book club?" A woman's voice came from somewhere between the stacks. Marcus turned and saw her emerging from behind a display of staff recommendations. She was probably in her late 40s, with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, reading glasses perched on her head, and an expression of genuine warmth. She wore jeans and a sweater the color of autumn leaves, and she carried a stack of paperbacks against her hip. "I am," Marcus said, suddenly feeling ridiculous in his tailored pants and button-down shirt. He had come straight from the office, from a world of conference rooms and acquisition deals. "Though I should warn you, I have not exactly been keeping up with current fiction." The woman laughed, and the sound was unexpectedly melodic. "Then you will fit right in. Half our group just likes to argue about plot holes while drinking wine. I'm Diane, by the way. I own this place." "Marcus." He extended his hand, and her handshake was firm, confident. "Well, Marcus, the rule is simple. Show up, be respectful, and try not to spoil endings for people who are reading slowly. We meet in the back room. Come on." He followed her through the maze of shelves, catching titles as he passed. Fiction, poetry, biography, history, all jumbled together in what seemed like organized chaos. The back room was cozy, with a mismatched collection of chairs arranged in a circle, a small table holding wine bottles and cheese, and windows that looked out onto a tiny courtyard garden. 5 people were already there, chatting and pouring drinks. They looked up as Diane entered with Marcus in tow. "Everyone, this is Marcus. He is new, so be gentle." Diane set down her books and immediately began rearranging chairs to make the circle bigger. "Marcus, this is everyone. They will introduce themselves, I am sure. Grab some wine if you want it." The group was eclectic. A young woman in her 20s with bright purple hair introduced herself as Kai, a graphic designer. An older gentleman named Robert was a retired teacher. There was Anne, a nurse who looked perpetually exhausted, and her husband Paul, who worked in insurance. The last member was a woman about Marcus's age named Virginia, an attorney who had the sharp look of someone who missed nothing. "What brings you to our little band of readers?" Virginia asked, studying Marcus with interest as he settled into a chair with a glass of red wine he did not particularly want. Honestly, my daughter thinks I need to get out more. Marcus figured honesty was easier than invention. My wife passed away 2 years ago. She was the reader in our family. I thought maybe I would give it a try. The room softened immediately. Diane, who had been pulling out her copy of the month's selection, looked up with understanding in her eyes. "I am sorry for your loss," she said simply, and the others murmured agreement. "Thank you." Marcus shifted in his seat. "So what are we rating?" Diane held up a paperback. "This month is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. But you did not know to come prepared, so do not worry about it. You can just listen, get a feel for how we operate." "I read it," Marcus said, surprising himself. "Years ago, actually. Sarah, my wife, she loved it, made me read it." Diane's face brightened. "Then you are absolutely prepared. What did you think?" And just like that, Marcus found himself talking about a book he had read 15 years ago, surprised by how much he remembered. The conversation flowed, sometimes serious literary analysis, sometimes wild tangents about favorite movies or worst jobs or the best place to get Thai food in the city. Virginia and Robert got into a spirited debate about the reliability of the narrator. Kai confessed she had cried at the ending. Anne admitted she had fallen asleep twice trying to finish it, and no one judged her. Through it all, Marcus found himself watching Diane. She moderated the discussion with a light touch, never dominating but always steering things back when they wandered too far astray. She laughed easily, listened intently, and had a way of asking questions that made people think deeper. When she caught him looking, she smiled, and Marcus felt something he had not felt in a long time, a flicker of interest, of curiosity about another person. The meeting wrapped up around 9. People lingered, helping clean up the wine glasses and cheese plates, making plans to grab dinner before next month's gathering. Marcus hung back, uncertain of the protocol. "So, will you come back?" Diane asked, suddenly beside him as he pretended to examine a shelf of poetry. "I think so," Marcus said, "if that is all right. More than all right, it is nice to have a new perspective." She tilted her head, studying him. "Can I make a recommendation? For reading, I mean. Please." She disappeared into the stacks and returned with a hardcover. "This just came in. I have not read it yet, but it is getting incredible reviews. Contemporary fiction about starting over after loss. I thought maybe it might resonate." Marcus took the book, looking at the cover. The title was simple, Second Acts. He met Diane's eyes and saw no pity there, just kindness and understanding. "Thank you." "On the house," she said when he reached for his wallet. "Consider it a welcome gift. Just come back and tell me what you think." Walking to his car, Marcus felt lighter than he had in months. The book was solid in his hand, a tangible thing to do, a reason to return. That night in his too-quiet house, he opened Second Acts and began to read. The following Tuesday, Marcus arrived at chapter and verse 30 minutes before book club was scheduled to start. He told himself it was because he wanted to browse, maybe buy a few more books, but the truth was simpler. He wanted to talk to Diane. She was at the register, helping a customer check out a stack of children's books. When she saw Marcus, her face lit up in recognition, and she waved. He wandered the store until the customer left, then approached the counter. "You came back," Diane said, pleased. "I finished the book you gave me." Marcus set the hardcover on the counter between them. "You were right, it resonated. And I bought 3 more of his books online at 2 in the morning because I could not wait." Marcus felt slightly embarrassed admitting it. I had forgotten what it felt like to get lost in a story. Diane's smile was radiant. That is exactly why I do this, that feeling right there. Did you order from a big retailer, or could I perhaps convince you to support your local independent bookstore? I am properly chastised, Marcus said with a laugh. I will order through you from now on. Good answer. She pulled out a notepad. What else did you order? I will make sure I stock them. They spent the next 20 minutes talking about books, and Marcus was surprised by how easy it was. Diane had opinions but held them lightly. She loved mysteries but hated when they were too gory. She adored literary fiction but needed a good romance novel now and then to cleanse the palate. She had read everything, it seemed, and remembered it all. How did you end up owning a bookstore? Marcus asked, leaning against the counter. The store was quiet, just one other browser in the history section. Long story or short version? I have time. Diane considered him for a moment, then nodded. I was in corporate marketing for 20 years, made good money, hated every minute. I was divorced, no kids, living in a condo I never spent time in because I was always working. One day I woke up and thought, what am I doing? So I quit. Cashed out my retirement, found this space, and opened the store. That was 8 years ago. Do you regret it? Not even once. She gestured around the store with obvious affection. I make a fraction of what I used to, and I work harder than ever, but I love it. Every single day, I get to talk about books with people. I get to hand sell a novel to someone and see them come back glowing because it changed their life. You cannot put a price on that. Marcus thought about his own work, the deals and developments, the constant hustle for bigger profits. When was the last time he had loved what he did? That is remarkable, he said quietly. What about you? What do you do when you are not reading novels at 2 in the morning? Commercial real estate development. I buy properties, develop them, sell them, or lease them. Strip malls, office buildings, that sort of thing. It sounded hollow even to his own ears. Do you love it? No one had asked him that in years. I used to, Marcus admitted. Or maybe I loved the challenge of building something from nothing. Now it is just routine. Close deals, manage projects, chase profits. Sounds lonely. The observation was gentle but cut deep. Before Marcus could respond, the bell above the door chimed, and other book club members began trickling in. The moment passed, but Marcus felt it settle somewhere in his chest, a truth he had been avoiding. That evening's discussion was about Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, a post-apocalyptic novel about art and survival. Marcus had read it in 3 days, staying up far too late. The conversation was lively, touching on everything from the importance of culture to the nature of memory. Marcus contributed more than he had the previous week, feeling more comfortable with the group's dynamic. Afterward, as people were leaving, Virginia approached him. You want to grab a drink with a few of us? There is a wine bar 2 blocks over. We usually go after club. Marcus glanced at Diane, who was stacking chairs. Do you go? He asked Virginia. Sometimes. Diane usually does. Then yes, I would like that. The wine bar was intimate and dimly lit, with a jazz trio playing in the corner. Their group claimed a large table near the windows. Diane ended up sitting next to Marcus, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something light and citrusy. So tell me, Marcus, Robert said, once they all had drinks, what made you actually pick commercial real estate? That seems like one of those things people fall into rather than dream about. Marcus sipped his bourbon, considering. My father was a contractor, built custom homes. I grew up on job sites, learning to frame walls before I could drive. I went to business school thinking I would take his company bigger, but he died my senior year. Heart attack, completely unexpected. My mother sold the business and I ended up in real estate development instead. Felt like honoring his legacy in some way. Was it? Diane asked softly. I thought so for a long time. Marcus turned his glass, watching the amber liquid catch the light. Built my first strip mall at 26. Made my first million by 30. Kept building from there. Married Sarah when I was 32. She grounded me, kept me from becoming completely consumed by work. We had Emma, bought the big house, did the whole family thing. It was good. Really good. And then, Anne prompted gently, cancer, ovarian, they caught it late. Even now, 2 years later, the words stuck in his throat. 18 months from diagnosis to the end. She fought so hard, but it was not enough. Diane's hand found his under the table, a brief squeeze of solidarity and comfort. The touch was electric, and Marcus felt it through his entire body. Emma lives in Seattle now, he continued, needing to finish the story. She is a marine biologist doing amazing work. I am proud of her, but the house is empty. Work is empty. Everything felt empty until I walked into chapter and verse 3 weeks ago. The table was quiet for a moment, the jazz filling the silence. We are glad you did, Virginia said, raising her glass. To new beginnings and good books. They all drank to that. As the evening wound down and people began calling cars and saying goodbyes, Marcus found himself walking with Diane back toward the bookstore, where her car was parked. Thank you for coming tonight, she said as they strolled through the cool evening air, and for sharing about your wife. I know that is not easy. It felt right, Marcus said. You have a gift for making people feel comfortable. Diane laughed. Occupational hazard of bookselling. You spend all day recommending intimate stories to strangers. You get good at reading people. They reached her car, an older Subaru with a bumper sticker that reads, so many books, so little time. Can I ask you something? Marcus said before she could unlock the door. Sure. Would you want to have coffee sometime? Not book club, just us. I would like to get to know you better. Diane studied him in the streetlight, her expression unreadable. Marcus felt like a teenager again, nervous and uncertain. Finally, she smiled. I would like that. How about Saturday morning? There is a great place near here that opens early. Relief and something warmer flooded through Marcus. Saturday morning sounds perfect. They exchanged numbers, and as Marcus walked to his own car, he realized he was smiling. Really smiling, for the first time in longer than he could remember. Saturday dawned bright and clear, and Marcus spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing what to wear. He settled on jeans and a casual shirt, trying for approachable rather than businessman. The coffee shop Diane had suggested was charming, with local art on the walls and the rich smell of fresh roasted beans. She was already there when he arrived, sitting at a table by the window with 2 mugs in front of her. I took the liberty of ordering, she said as he sat down. Black coffee, right? You strike me as a black coffee person. Guilty. Marcus took a sip. It was excellent, bold and smooth. Good guess. Not a guess. Observation. You are straightforward, no frills. Seemed like it would extend to coffee. What about you? Marcus gestured to her mug. Cappuccino with an extra shot. I need the caffeine, but like a little sweetness with it. She grinned. What does that say about me? That you are practical but not opposed to pleasure. I like that interpretation. They talked for 2 hours, covering everything from childhood to career paths to favorite foods. Marcus learned that Diane had grown up in Ohio, the youngest of 4 siblings. She had wanted to be a writer as a kid, but discovered she liked selling books more than writing them. She had been married for 12 years to a man who turned out to want very different things from life. He wanted kids, a house in the suburbs, the traditional path, Diane explained, her fingers wrapped around her mug. I thought I wanted that too, but the more we tried, the more I realized I did not. The divorce was amicable, but it still hurt, felt like failing. I do not think choosing authenticity is failure, Marcus said. Took me a while to see it that way, but yes, you are right. She met his eyes. What about you? If you could do anything, what would it be? No one had asked Marcus that in decades. I honestly do not know anymore. I used to have dreams, but they got buried under responsibility and routine. Sarah always said I should take time to figure out what made me happy beyond work and family, but I never did. And now she is gone, Emma is grown, and I have all this time but no idea what to do with it. Then maybe that is your project, Diane suggested. Figuring out who Marcus is when he is not defined by what he does for others. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. They left the coffee shop and ended up walking through the nearby park, drawn by the beautiful weather. Families picnicked on the grass, dogs chased frisbees, and the trees were heavy with late spring blooms. "Can I confess something?" Diane said as they followed a path around a small pond. "Please." "I am terrible at dating. I have not done this in years. I have no idea what I am doing." Marcus laughed, relieved. "That makes 2 of us. I have not been on a date since 1998. I am completely out of practice." "Well, then we will be out of practice together." Diane stopped walking and turned to face him. "I like you, Marcus. I like that you are trying to figure yourself out. I like that you are honest. I would like to keep doing this, whatever this is." "I would like that too." Marcus felt bold suddenly, buoyed by her directness. "I have not felt this interested in anything in a long time. You make me want to read books and have conversations and maybe figure out who I am now." "That is a pretty good start," Diane said softly. They stood there by the pond, the world moving around them, and Marcus felt the future open up in a way it had not since Sarah died. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once. Over the following weeks, Marcus and Diane fell into an easy rhythm. Coffee on Saturday mornings became a standing date. They added Wednesday dinners, exploring restaurants in the city neither had tried. Marcus started spending time at chapter and verse, not just for book club, but helping Diane with odd jobs around the store. He fixed a wobbly shelf, reorganized the storage room, and even learned to work the register during a particularly busy Saturday. "You are pretty good at this," Diane observed, watching him ring up a customer's purchase of 3 mysteries and a cookbook. "I have retail experience from college," Marcus said. "Worked at a hardware store. Apparently, it is like riding a bike." Emma called one evening while Marcus was making dinner, something he had started doing again, instead of ordering takeout every night. "Dad, you sound different," she said after they had caught up on her work. "Different how?" "Lighter, happier. What is going on?" Marcus stirred the pasta sauce, considering how much to share. "I joined a book club, made some friends. I have been reading a lot." "That is great, Dad. Mom would love that." Emma paused. "Is that all?" His daughter knew him too well. "There is a woman, Diane. She owns the bookstore where the book club meets. We have been spending time together." The squeal that came through the phone nearly deafened him. "Dad, that is amazing. Tell me everything." Marcus laughed and told her about Diane, about the books and the coffee dates, and the easy way they had of being together. Emma listened, asking questions, and by the end of the call she was thrilled. "You deserve this," she said firmly. "You deserve to be happy again. When do I get to meet her?" "Slow down. We are taking things easy, figuring it out as we go." "Fine, but I expect updates, regular updates." After they hung up, Marcus felt a weight lift. Emma's blessing mattered more than he had realized. Sarah would have wanted this too, would have wanted him to move forward, to live fully again. The guilt he had been carrying, the feeling that moving on was somehow betraying her memory, began to ease. At book club the following week, they discussed Educated by Tara Westover. The conversation was intense, touching on family loyalty, the pursuit of knowledge, and the cost of transformation. Marcus found himself sharing stories about his own education, the pressure he had felt to succeed after his father's death, the way he had buried himself in work and achievement. "Do you think you were running from grief?" Kai asked, her purple hair now streaked with pink. "Probably," Marcus admitted. "It is easier to stay busy than to feel sometimes." Virginia nodded knowingly. "I did the same thing after my divorce. Took every case I could, worked 80-hour weeks. Took my daughter sitting me down and telling me I was disappearing for me to see it." "What changed?" Anne asked. "I decided presence was more important than productivity. Started saying no to cases, yes to dinner with friends, got a life outside the office." Virginia smiled at Marcus. "Sounds like you are doing the same thing." After the meeting, Marcus stayed to help Diane close up the store. It had become their routine, this quiet time together after everyone left. They would tally the register, straighten shelves, talk about the discussion or their days or nothing in particular. "I have been thinking," Diane said as she counted bills. "My sister lives in the mountains about 2 hours from here. She has been asking me to visit, bring a friend. It is beautiful up there, hiking trails, a lake. Would you want to go next weekend?" Make it an overnight trip. Marcus's heart kicked up a notch. An overnight trip felt significant, a step forward in whatever they were building. "I would love that." Diane looked up from the register, her eyes searching his. "Just to be clear, I am talking 2 rooms. I am old-fashioned that way, or maybe just cautious. But I want to spend more time with you, away from the city." 2 rooms sounds perfect," Marcus said, and meant it. He wanted to know Diane in all contexts, see how she was in different settings, continue building whatever this connection was between them. The following Saturday, Marcus picked Diane up early and they headed into the mountains. She brought a bag of road trip snacks and a carefully curated playlist that spanned decades and genres. They sang along to songs they both knew, argued playfully about music preferences, and stopped at a roadside diner for lunch. Diane's sister, Laura, lived in a cabin that looked like something from a storybook. All natural wood and floor-to-ceiling windows with views of pine forests and distant peaks. She greeted them warmly, a slightly older version of Diane with the same easy laugh. "So you are the infamous Marcus," Laura said, hugging him like they were old friends. "Diane has told me all about you." "Only good things, I hope," Marcus replied. "Mostly," Laura teased, earning an eye roll from Diane. They spent the afternoon hiking a trail that wound through the forest to a waterfall. Marcus had not hiked in years, but his body remembered the rhythm, and the exercise felt good. Diane was surprisingly athletic, setting a steady pace. They talked some but also enjoyed comfortable silences, just being present in nature. At the waterfall, they sat on a flat rock and watched the water cascade down. "Sarah and I used to hike," Marcus said suddenly. "Before Emma, we would spend weekends in the mountains. After she was born, we got busy and stopped. I always meant to start again, but there was never time." "Do you think about her a lot?" Diane asked gently. "Every day, but it is different now. Less painful, more like carrying memories instead of drowning in them." Marcus picked up a small stone, turning it over in his hands. "I think she would like you." "You think?" "I know. She always said I needed someone who would challenge me, make me think, not let me hide and work. You do all those things." Diane leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture of intimacy that felt natural. "I am glad you walked into my bookstore." "Me too." That evening, Laura made dinner while they all drank wine and talked. She told embarrassing stories about Diane's childhood, much to her sister's mock horror. Marcus shared stories about Emma, about the funny things she had done growing up. It felt like family, warm and easy. Later, after Laura had gone to bed, Marcus and Diane sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching stars appear in the clear mountain sky. "I have not been this happy in a long time," Diane said quietly. "It scares me a little." "Why?" "Because happiness can be taken away. I learned that in my divorce. You learned it losing Sarah. When you let yourself care, you make yourself vulnerable." Marcus understood that fear intimately. "But the alternative is shutting down, closing off. That is not really living." "No, it is not." Diane turned to look at him in the darkness. "So what do? We take the risk," Marcus said. "We let ourselves care and hope that this time it works out. That's simple. That's simple. And that complicated." Diane laughed and kissed him, soft and sweet. It was their first real kiss, and Marcus felt it resonate through his whole being, a rightness that made everything else fall away. When they returned to the city Sunday evening, something had shifted between them. They were no longer just dating, just figuring things out. They were building something real. Summer settled over the city, bringing heat and long evenings. Marcus found himself restructuring his work life, delegating more to his team, taking actual days off. He and Diane spent evenings at outdoor concerts, farmers' markets, art fairs. They read books on her tiny balcony, made dinner together in his too large kitchen, talked about everything and nothing. Book club continued to be the anchor of their week, joined now by additional social events with the group. They had become Marcus's community, these eclectic people brought together by a love of reading. Virginia invited everyone to her lake house for a weekend. Robert hosted a murder mystery dinner party. Kai organized a group outing to a literary festival. Through it all, Marcus felt himself coming back to life, rediscovering parts of himself he had lost or forgotten. He started sketching again, something he had done as a young man but abandoned. He took Diane to visit Emma in Seattle, and the two women bonded instantly, talking for hours while Marcus watched with a full heart. "I really like her, Dad," Emma said when they had a moment alone. "She is good for you." "She is good, period," Marcus replied. In August, on a particularly hot evening, Marcus took Diane to the site of his next development project. It was a large plot of land near the river that had once housed a factory. Most developers would tear everything down and build luxury condos, maximizing profit. But standing there with Diane, Marcus had a different vision. "What if we built something the community actually needs?" he said, gesturing across the empty space. "Affordable housing, yes, but also retail spaces for local businesses. A community garden, green space, something that serves people instead of just generating returns." Diane looked at him with surprise and pride. "Can you do that? I mean financially?" "I have enough money, more than enough, honestly." "What is the point of wealth if you do not use it for something meaningful?" The idea was growing as he spoke, taking shape. I could create something that actually matters, that helps people. That would be a legacy worth leaving. Then you should do it, Diane said firmly. Absolutely do it. Marcus pulled her close, looking out over the land with new eyes. For the first time in years, he was excited about work again, but for different reasons. Not profit or prestige, but purpose. The project consumed the next several months, but in a good way. Marcus assembled a team who shared his vision, architects and urban planners who understood community-focused development. Diane helped where she could, offering insights from her years in the neighborhood, connecting Marcus with local business owners and community leaders. Book club continued through it all, a constant in the midst of change. They read everything from classics to contemporary fiction, memoirs to poetry. The discussions ranged from hilarious to heartbreaking, but always engaging. Marcus discovered he had opinions about literature, preferences and perspectives he had never explored. In October, Virginia pulled Marcus aside after a particularly spirited debate about the goldfinch. "You know, half the club thinks you and Diane are going to get engaged soon," she said with her characteristic bluntness. Marcus nearly choked on his wine. "Is that right? Robert has a bet going. Anne thinks you will propose by Christmas. Paul says New Year's. Kai is holding out for some grand romantic gesture. And what do you think?" Virginia smiled. "I think you are two adults who know what you want. When you are ready, you will know. Just do not wait too long. Life is short and you have already lost enough time to grief." Her words stayed with Marcus. He had been thinking about the future, about permanence, about what came next. He and Diane had not talked explicitly about marriage, but they had talked about everything else. They had shared their fears and hopes, their pasts and dreams for the future. They had built something solid and real. On a Friday evening in November, Marcus closed the bookstore with Diane as he had done countless times before. But tonight he had a plan. "I have something I want to show you," he said when they finished cashing out. "Oh, what is it?" "A surprise, trust me." Diane grabbed her coat. "Always." Marcus drove them to the development site. In the months since he had first brought her here, the land had been cleared and foundations laid. Now, under temporary work lights, the skeleton of the future building stood against the darkening sky. "I know it does not look like much yet," Marcus said as they walked through the site, both wearing the hard hats he had brought. "But I can see it. Apartments over there, affordable but beautiful. Retail spaces along this side, sized for independent shops, with rent structures that make sense for small business owners. The community garden here, and a plaza where people can gather." "It is amazing," Diane said, her breath fogging in the cold air. "You are actually doing it." "We are doing it," Marcus corrected. "You helped make this happen. Your belief that work could be meaningful, your connection to the community, your vision for what a neighborhood should be. This is as much yours as mine." He led her to the center of where the plaza would be, marked now by stakes and string. In the spring, this would be green space, trees and benches, a place for people to gather and connect. "Diane, these past months with you have been the happiest of my life since Sarah died. Maybe even before that, if I am honest. You have helped me remember who I am beyond work and obligation. You have shown me that starting over is not betrayal, it is honoring what came before by living fully now." Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Diane's hands flew to her mouth. "I know we are not kids. We have both had lives before this, love before this, loss before this, but I also know that love does not have an expiration date. It does not run out or get used up. Every day with you proves that." He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring that caught the work lights. "I am not asking you to replace what was. I am asking you to build something new with me. Marry me, Diane. Let us prove that second chances are real." Tears streamed down Diane's face. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "Yes, absolutely yes." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, and she kissed him there in the future plaza, surrounded by construction and possibility and hope. They told the book club at the next meeting, and the reaction was exactly what Marcus expected: chaos and joy. Anne cried. Kai whooped. Robert shook Marcus's hand so hard it hurt. Virginia just smiled knowingly and collected her winnings from the engagement pool. "When is the wedding?" Paul asked. Marcus and Diane looked at each other and laughed. "We have not gotten that far," Diane admitted. "We just got engaged yesterday." "Small," Marcus said. "Intimate. Just people we love." "And soon," Diane added. "We have both waited long enough." They settled on a date in January, just 2 months away. It was quick, but neither saw a reason to wait. They were adults who knew what they wanted. Emma flew in from Seattle to help plan and immediately took charge with cheerful efficiency. "You are terrible at weddings," she informed her father. "Lucky for you, I am not." The ceremony was held at chapter and verse, surrounded by books and the people who had become family. Diane wore a simple cream dress, Marcus a dark suit. Emma stood up for her father, Laura for Diane. The whole book club was there, along with Marcus's business partners, Diane's employees, and friends from their separate and now joined lives. The vows they exchanged were their own, written in the same honest way they approached everything. "I thought my story was over," Marcus said, holding Diane's hands. "That the best chapters were behind me. You taught me that there are always more pages, more plot twists, more adventures to be had. You taught me that love is not something that runs out, but something that grows when you are brave enough to stay open. I love you, and I cannot wait to see what we write together." Diane's voice was steady despite her tears. "You walked into my bookstore looking lost and ended up helping me find things I did not know I was missing. A partner, a collaborator, a love that feels like coming home. You show me every day that it is never too late to start over, to try again, to believe in happy endings. I love you, Marcus. Let us write the best ending we can imagine." They kissed to applause and laughter, and the celebration that followed was warm and joyful. There was champagne and cake, dancing to a playlist Diane had curated, toasts that ranged from heartfelt to hilarious. Virginia caught Marcus during a quiet moment. "You did good," she said simply. "You both did. Thank you for everything. If you had not convinced me to come back after that first night, I might have bailed." "I did not convince you of anything. That was all Diane. She has a gift for seeing who people are and who they could be. She saw you clearly from the start." Marcus watched his new wife across the room, laughing with Emma and Laura, her ring catching the light. "I am the luckiest man alive." "Maybe," Virginia allowed, "but you also did the work. You stayed open when it would have been easier to shut down. You took the risk. That counts for something." The newlyweds honeymooned for 2 weeks in Italy, where they ate too much pasta, drank excellent wine, and visited so many bookstores that Emma started texting jokes about their luggage weight on the return flight. It was perfect and lazy and exactly what they both needed. Returning home, they moved into Marcus's house, which Diane promptly began filling with books and plants and color. It came alive in ways it had not since Sarah died, and Marcus realized that honoring the past did not mean preserving it in amber. Life was meant to be lived, spaces meant to evolve. Emma visited in March, just as the development project was nearing completion. Marcus gave her a tour of the nearly finished buildings, pointing out features with pride. "Mom would be so proud of you," Emma said, looking at the community garden taking shape. "This is the kind of thing she always dreamed you would do." "I think she would be proud of both of us," Marcus replied. "I am finally living the life she wanted for me, and you are saving the oceans. We turned out all right." "We did." "And Dad, I really love Diane. She fits, like she was always supposed to be here." "I know exactly what you mean." The grand opening of the development was a community event. Local press covered it, impressed by the affordable housing model and community-focused design. Marcus gave interviews, but deflected most of the credit to his team and to Diane, whose insights had shaped the project. Book club met that evening as usual, and the discussion was about Becoming by Michelle Obama. The conversation touched on reinvention, public service, and the many ways a life can unfold. "I think what resonates most is that she kept evolving," Anne said. "She did not just find one identity and stick with it. She let herself grow and change." "That is the hardest part," Diane agreed. "Giving yourself permission to be different than you were, to want different things, to become someone new while honoring who you were." Marcus thought about his own evolution over the past year and a half. From grief-stricken widower to bookstore regular to engaged man to husband to community developer. Each version built on what came before but was not limited by it. "I read somewhere that we are all unreliable narrators of our own lives," Kai said. "We tell ourselves stories about who we are, but those stories can change." "What is your story now?" Robert asked Marcus directly. Marcus considered the question, looking around the circle at these people who had become so important to him, landing on Diane, his partner in all things. "I am someone who learned that endings are also beginnings," he said slowly. "That loss does not disqualify you from joy. That love is not finite or fragile, but something that expands to fill the space you give it. I am someone who found his way back to living by sitting in a bookstore and letting people in. I am someone who believes that it is never too late to write a new chapter." "That is a good story," Virginia said with approval. "It is a true story," Marcus corrected. "The best kind." The discussion moved on, as it always did, ranging and roaming through the text and into their own experiences. But Marcus sat quietly for a moment, letting gratitude wash over him. For the courage that had brought him through the bookstore door that first night. For Diane's openness and wisdom. For this community of readers who had shown him there were more ways to live than he had imagined. For Emma's blessing and support. For Sarah's memory, which he carried but was no longer buried under. After book club, walking home with Diane through the spring night, Marcus felt complete in a way he had not thought possible. Not because all the pain was gone or all the questions answered, but because he had learned to live with uncertainty, to embrace possibility, to stay open to whatever came next. "What are you thinking about?" Diane asked, slipping her hand into his. "How a year and a half ago I was sure my life was essentially over, that the good parts were finished. And now? Now I know better. Now I know that love does not have an expiration date, that happiness can come more than once. That the story is not over until it is over, and even then, the impact ripples out beyond us." Diane squeezed his hand. "That is very poetic for someone who claimed not to be a reader." Marcus laughed. "I had a good teacher." They walked in comfortable silence, past the houses and shops they had come to know so well, through the neighborhood that had become home in every sense. Above them, the stars were coming out, the same stars that had witnessed his grief and his healing, his despair and his hope, his ending and his beginning. Tomorrow there would be work to do, books to read, meals to share, a life to build together. But tonight was enough. This moment was enough. This love was enough. And Marcus, who had thought he knew how his story ended, discovered that the best chapters were still being written one day, one book, one conversation, one kiss at a time. Love, he had learned, was not something that expired or ran out. It was something that renewed and deepened, that surprised and challenged, that asked you to be brave enough to try again. He had walked into chapter and verse looking for distraction and found purpose. He had joined a book club to fill empty hours and found community. He had met Diane thinking maybe she could be a friend and found his future. The grief support counselor had been right about hobbies helping, though probably not in the way she had imagined. Reading had not erased Marcus's pain or brought Sarah back. But it had opened doors he thought were closed, introduced him to people who changed his trajectory, reminded him that stories continue long past the point where we think they might end. As they reached their front door, Diane turned to kiss him, and Marcus tasted tomorrow in that kiss, tasted possibility and promise and hope. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you too," she replied. "Now come inside. I started a new book I think you will like, and I want to read you the first chapter." Inside, Marcus settled onto the couch with his wife curled against him, listening to her voice bring a story to life. Outside, the world turned. People lived and died and loved and lost and found their way forward. But here, in this moment, Marcus had everything he needed. A woman who saw him clearly and loved what she saw. A purpose that made work meaningful. A community that felt like family. A daughter who was thriving and happy for him. A future that stretched out full of books to read and conversations to have and life to live. Sarah's photo still sat on the mantel, smiling at them both. Marcus had worried that bringing Diane into his home would feel like betrayal, like erasing what had been. But instead, it felt like honoring it. Sarah had wanted him to be happy, to live fully, to love deeply, and he was. He did. He would. Diane's voice washed over him, pulling him into a story about second chances and unlikely connections, about characters who thought they knew how their lives would unfold and were surprised by joy. It felt familiar, this story. It felt true. When she finished the chapter, Diane looked up at him. "What do you think?" "I think I cannot wait to find out what happens next," Marcus said, and he was not just talking about the book. They read late into the night, as they often did now, passing a novel back and forth, taking turns with voices and characters. Sometimes they stopped to discuss a particularly good line, or debate a character's motivation. Sometimes they just read in comfortable silence, sharing space and story and the simple pleasure of being together. This was the life Marcus had not known to imagine. Not better than what came before, because grief and joy were not comparable currencies, but rich and full and worth every risk it had taken to find. He had learned that hearts do not really break, they tear and rend and seem irreparable. But they also, impossibly, heal. Not perfectly, not without scars, but into something that can hold new love alongside old memories. The book club reading list for the rest of the year sat on the coffee table, a stack of promises and possibilities. Next month was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, about infinite choices and the lives we do not live. Marcus was already looking forward to the discussion, to the arguments and insights and laughter that would flow. But more than that, he was looking forward to walking into chapter and verse with Diane, to seeing Robert and Virginia and Anne and Paul and Kai, to belonging somewhere and to someone. He was looking forward to helping with the reading displays and straightening shelves, and being part of something larger than himself. He was looking forward to watching the community development fill with families and businesses, to seeing the garden bloom and the plaza fill with neighbors. He was looking forward to creating rather than just profiting, to building legacy rather than just wealth. He was looking forward to every ordinary moment with Diane, to every extraordinary discovery of who they were becoming together, to lazy Sunday mornings and challenging Tuesday book clubs and all the moments in between. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight, and Diane set down the book with a yawn. "We should sleep," she said, though neither moved. "In a minute," Marcus replied, not ready to let go of the evening just yet. They sat together in the quiet house, and Marcus thought about all the choices that had led to this moment. The grief counselor who suggested hobbies. The impulse that made him stop outside chapter and verse. The courage it took to walk through the door. The decision to come back. The honesty to be vulnerable. The willingness to risk loving again. Any one of those things could have gone differently. He could have chosen a different hobby, a different bookstore, a different night. He could have left after the first meeting and never returned. He could have kept Diane at arm's length, protected his heart, stayed safe in his grief. But he had not, and that had made all the difference. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me when I could barely see myself. For believing I had more story to tell. For proving that love does not expire, it just evolves." Diane kissed his cheek. "You did the same for me. I thought I was content with my bookstore and my routines. You showed me I could have more, be more, risk more. We saved each other, I think." "We did." They finally made their way upstairs, through the house that was now theirs together, past rooms filled with combined lives and merged histories. Marcus caught his reflection in a hallway mirror and barely recognized himself. Not because he looked different, though he did, lighter and more alive, but because he felt different, fundamentally changed by the simple act of staying open to possibility. In bed, Diane fell asleep quickly, her breathing evening out into the rhythm Marcus had come to love. He lay awake a while longer, thinking about the arc of his life, the unexpected turns and twists, the way everything could change in an instant or slowly over months of Tuesday evenings and Saturday morning coffees. He thought about Sarah and sent her a silent thank you for the years they had shared, for Emma, for showing him what love could be. He thought about Emma thriving in Seattle, building her own life and legacy. He thought about the book club gang and the community they had created around stories and conversation. He thought about the families who would soon move into his affordable housing, the small business owners who would open shops in his retail spaces, the neighbors who would gather in the plaza. But mostly he thought about Diane, asleep beside him, and the profound gift of finding love twice in one lifetime. Of learning that the heart has infinite capacity, that joy and sorrow can coexist, that endings and beginnings are often the same moment seen from different angles. Marcus finally drifted off, his last conscious thought a line from a poem Diane had read to him weeks ago. "There are more ways to bloom than we imagine." He had found his way to bloom again, impossibly, beautifully, against all his expectations. And tomorrow he would wake up next to his wife, drink coffee made just the way he liked it, work on projects that mattered, read books that challenged him, and live the life he had thought was over. Tomorrow and every tomorrow after that, Marcus would prove what he had learned in a bookstore on a random Tuesday evening when grief had driven him to try something new. That love has no expiration date, that second chances are real, that it is never too late to start a new chapter, and that sometimes the best stories are the ones we never saw coming. The house settled into sleep around them, full of books and memories and hope. And Marcus Ashford, millionaire widower turned community developer turned beloved husband, rested in the peace of knowing he had found his way home.